the really challenging part about marketing and selling your wedding services is that it's not just one buyer. We don't have just an ideal client who's making the purchase decision. We have multiple people. We have at least two people who are involved, the couple that's getting married, but we also have other people who are involved, whether it's directly or indirectly. And so when we go through and we think about how do you market and how do you sell, my advice is market to your ideal client and sell to anybody you want to put a date on the calendar with.
Welcome to Shoot the Veil, a mobile app made by wedding photographers for wedding photographers to help inspire you to create and equip you to grow. I'm Sam.
And I'm Donnie, and this podcast is about wedding photography as an art and as a business. All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Shoot the Veil. Glad you're here. Today we have Sam Jacobson with Ideaction Consulting. He has been so inspirational to me in the time that I've been getting to know his stuff. It just changes everything about how you think about sales, marketing, talking to clients, booking clients, serving clients. He's got something to say about everything. So, Sam, we're excited to have you here. You seem to just have knowledge on every topic that a wedding photographer could care about. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, we're excited. Ideaction began at some point recently and you just kind of took off like crazy, but that wasn't your beginning. Will you just give us like the Cliff's Notes version of where you started? How do you know so much about sales and about wedding industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I got my start like most people in the wedding industry through happenstance. I was working in restaurants at the time at this resort in Washington State. And the GM of the company came over one day to my restaurant office and he said, "Hey, Sam, the event manager quit to go and help out an emergency situation with her family. And we need you to come over and run the events department for a little while." And I was like, "Okay, great. Sounds good. When do I start?" He said, "Today. We have a ceremony rehearsal in a couple of hours that I need you to run."
Oh my gosh.
And that was it. I had been to a couple of cousins' weddings and my dad and my stepmom when they got married, and that was it. So I had to learn real quickly. And like all things in my life, I just immersed myself in getting as much information as I could so that I could master the skill set. And so I've been doing this for 18 years now, work in the wedding industry in one way or another. I started back in 2006 as a venue manager. We did in-house catering. I did sales there for 8 years. And over the course of that 8 years, I really put a lot of effort into understanding how human beings make decisions. What I realized is that, like some people, I had been born with a little bit of natural ability in sales. I'd always done something related to sales, whether it was the, Kool-Aid stand with the Rice Krispie treats and the garbage pail kids when I was in my, my elementary school years, or working my way through college as a server at the Olive Garden. I was a cold caller for our college annual giving fund, where I was one of those guys that would call up and ask if you wanted to donate to the scholarship fund. I just always been pretty good at it. And then when I got into weddings, I realized that my natural ability and my charisma was only going to get me so far. And I realized I have to get good at this. And there was a wealth of information that was just starting to come out on the scene. This is back in like 2011, 2012 on behavioral economics. And so I started delving into the information on behavioral economics and how humans make decisions, buyer psychology. And I just read everything that I could. And eventually I started to learn what I needed to and practice it. And I had such a tight feedback loop with the couples that I was touring around with that, I was getting 500 inquiries a year the last year I was doing sales for the company. So I could experiment like in real time and like A/B test what would work and what wouldn't. And so over that kind of decade, I was able to really decide what was going to be a successful path for me to sell and also eventually for other people to sell. And 7.5, 8 years ago, I decided to not do it myself, but instead coach and train other people in the wedding industry. And I've been doing this since 2016 now.
Wow. There's something definitely powerful about having so many practice rounds, like so much time to figure it out. Because we're dealing with like 20, 30, 40 wedding inquiries a year, like max. You're dealing with 500 a year. And so you get to test a lot of the things, and you've kind of found some things that worked. I'm excited for our photographers to get to hear some of this, because there's a lot of ways to mess it up. There's a lot of ways to mess up from the inquiry you get. Like, hey, Donnie, I'm looking for some pricing on a wedding. Would you send me your price guide? Okay, sure. Here's my price guide. Sam Jacobson would say, yeah, you already screwed up.
Yeah.
Like there's so many ways to mess up the entire process step by step.
Right.
And so as we're listening today, I think everything's going to change. If a photographer's taking notes today, so many things about your process is going to change today.
100%.
Well, you know what I like to say? I like to say on podcasts, because I know so many photographers do their editing while they're listening to the podcast. Like if you want to take notes, now's the time to pause what you're doing with the editing and actually listen. This is the kind of stuff that has changed the trajectory of people's businesses. And it's usually just one little thing that you pick up on and you're like, I'm going to start doing that. And it's a course correction that moves you in the right direction. Not everything is going to be gold, but there might be one little golden nugget in here that you need. So absolutely pay attention. This is the kind of stuff that can change the trajectory of your business.
Yeah.
Amazing.
For sure.
So Sam, you do a lot when it comes to helping photographers succeed. You offer coaching and one-on-one coaching and helping them get to the point where they want to be in their photography career. You audit websites. You provide website spaces on Showit and all this stuff that are proven to help photographers with SEO and just placement on their website. And so there's a few questions that come straight to my mind when we set this up and we're getting prepared to host this podcast. And I'm thinking, what are some of the common mistakes that photographers make when just laying out their website? What are a few that come right to the top of your head when you've seen over the years that photographers do?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that a lot of salespeople or marketers run into is that they use a better product strategy. And what I mean by better product strategy is they think that if they have the best product out there, that it will get them the business that they want, or focus on the product, right? Like the reason why people book my services is because I have really beautiful photos. Well, yes, you do. And so do a lot of other people. And to the untrained eye, AKA most couples who are getting married, they have no clue how to differentiate between your beautiful images and somebody else's beautiful images. They just, they know it, they feel it, right? And so when we're putting our product out there, we have to tell a story about it that's going to give people an understanding of what they need to make a decision. Some of it's going to be facts and figures and data, but a lot of it's going to be emotional or social needs that need to be met. And so when we look at our website, we have to do more than just put our photos out there. It can't just be a homepage with some pretty images and then a click through to your portfolio or your journal, and then an about page that has mostly information about you personally or a bio about you. And then you go to the contact page and you have a form that they have to fill out, and they have to do 19 different fields, including how much money they want to spend. And then they click submit like that. Right. There's 948 different mistakes that most people are making, but that is the general approach that I see a lot of photographers take. And unfortunately, it's part of the reason why you're not getting enough inquiries from the right people.
That's so good.
Everybody listening is thinking, yeah, that's exactly my website. And I chose my prettiest pictures and the ones I liked the most. And that's how my website came together.
Because my photos will do all the selling.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all.
There's more to it then. So keep going. Where you go from there?
So one of the things that I want to, how about I dig into a few of the different problems, like you said, the kind of mistakes that we see people make. So, number one on that would be a homepage without a lot of information, or at least the right kind of information. The second one would be an about page that's mostly about you and your experience and your history and what you love and value in the world. A third thing would be a contact page that has a really extensive form that also talks about budget. So like, let's just talk about those three things.
Let's do. Yes.
So the homepage is where you hook the person who lands on your website. You have to get them to come in and to want to stay. Now, most people are going to look at the hero image and a little bit of the content that's right below. If you don't get them like that in the first handful of seconds, they're just going to bounce off the site. And you can check and see how effective your site is if you go into your analytics and you look and you see what your bounce rates are. You want to have something that's lower rather than higher. You want to have a fewer percentage of people who go to your site and look at one page and leave. And the way to do that is obviously to have a really great image on your hero image, but it's that hook right below that most people are missing. Oftentimes what we see is nothing, or we see at Sam Jacobson Photography, we believe that, blah, 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 blah. And the challenge with that is that it's about you. It's about the business. It's about, what you want to talk about, or your history, your approach. And at the end of the day, people are on their site because they're there for a reason that is driven by what they want and need. And so instead of talking about you, you should be talking about them. Instead of saying I or we, it should be you. And that hook should, could be a tagline, could be just one sentence, could be a sentence with a few other sentences underneath it, but it should speak directly to their biggest desire or concern. You want evocative images that you can look back on for years to come, or you want to look back on the images without knowing that the photographer is there. You want whatever it might be that's driving the decision making for them. You want to lead with that biggest desire, and that's the hook, and that's the thing that most websites are missing within the first few seconds of the visitor being on the site.
Yeah, that's so big, and I feel like I'm cheating. I kind of know where this course goes, where you take people, but it's so important to identify in those hooks that those were 3 or 4 very different kinds of people that you just described. You just threw out some examples, but do I want to look like I'm editorializing, going into a magazine? I could be on the cover of something, or do I just want amazing shots of me and my friends, or do I want to be just me and my fiance and my family just crying over every little moment? These are very different kinds of people, and you're going to use words that talk directly to them. But I'm going to point out, like, you're not talking to the other 3 or 4 when you talk to them, because you can't just say, I want photos, or you want photos, we do photos, here's how you buy. Like, it's got to be more specific. And when you do that, you're isolating some that you're not talking to.
This is what we talk about with the idea of like filters or attracting and repelling, and I don't like attract and repel. I just don't like the repel part, because I don't think that it's going to repel many people by just focusing on the good part of it. But really what we're talking about is a conversion copywriting formula that's called PAS, problem, agitate, solve, where you speak to the problem that your reader has, and then you agitate or amplify the need that they have, and then you jump in with the solution. What most wedding pros do, what most DIY marketers, because that's really what we're talking about here, not wedding pros, people who don't have an understanding, experience, training, or skill in marketing their services or selling their services. We have to get back to this PAS, problem, agitate, solve. If you provide a solution when the people don't know what their problem is, they won't want it. This is why I love that we're talking about the mistakes that photographers make in their marketing and sales, because if you're listening to this podcast, you might be triggered right now and going, whoa, hold on. I didn't even know that was an issue. Like, really? You can't just put an about page with your bio on it? I thought that's what everybody does. The people that I look up to who are in the photography space in the wedding world, they do that. Why can't I? Well, there's lots of reasons. But my point is that when I speak to mistakes that I see people make, or that you are now hearing about for the first time, in marketing vernacular, we would say, I'm moving you from unaware to problem aware. And that's a big step, where you all of a sudden know for the first time, I need this thing. I have this issue. I don't know what the solutions are, but I know that I have a problem that I need to solve. And so moving it back from people who are listening to this podcast, but people who are on your website, when people go to your website, they know that they need wedding photography, but they don't know what they really need. And that's what you're doing on your homepage. You are meeting them where they're at in the decision-making process by speaking specifically to the things that are the non-functional, the emotional and the social needs that they have. And when you connect very deeply with that emotional or that social need, you immediately hit a point, a trigger point where now they're paying attention and they're like, oh, that, like, I feel that non-consciously. I feel that. And now that it's there, that you said it, I consciously understand it. And now I want to learn about what are the solutions to this problem that you just helped me identify with. What are the services you offer to help me get this big desire or concern resolved that you just mentioned on the hook?
So if you say, don't you want to look at your images without being aware that the photographer was in your face? The person that wants that, they didn't even know they wanted it. But when they read that, suddenly they're like, yeah, that is me. I hate it when photographers are in my face. They didn't come looking for that, but now you're giving them, now they're problem aware.
That's right. Now you've triggered a need that they have that was buried down below, that emotional need, not the functional, but the emotional or the social need. And now they're like, okay, what's below? And then if you can follow that up with additional content that says, hey, I understand where you're at and I know how to get where you're going to want to go. And you should trust me, keep going, keep reading, keep digging into the information. That's an invitation then to see you as a solution provider. And at that point, that's when they're going to start exploring the website. That's when they're actually interested in your portfolio. That's when they want to read your about page. That's when that's when they're able to dig into the services that you offer. Services is just another word for solutions. And that'd be a fourth thing that we see a lot of mistakes on websites, is that people don't have a services page. Or at least the services page, experience, info, details, whatever, really doesn't focus on the services that you offer, the solutions that you offer. Typically it's, pricing information or information about your packages, which are, not the direction that you want to take them at that point in the buyer's journey.
Hey guys, real quick, just to interrupt the podcast. We were talking about ways to see this grow. We're so excited to have an impact in a real way on the wedding photography world. We want to see it grow and become all that it's supposed to be, and you become all that you're supposed to be. One of the coolest things that we could see you do right now is give a 5-star review, subscribe to the podcast. That tells Apples and Spotify's and all that it's cool, that other people might like it. So that would mean the world to us. And I think it would mean a lot to the wedding photography world. So thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So many good snippets. Just gold nugget after gold nugget. I'm learning so much right now. I think I need to go redesign my website when we get done with this.
Probably. I haven't looked at your site, but
Sam,
probably.
we gotta go hop on another call and talk about some stuff.
I'm curious. This is totally off the cuff and totally not fair.
Yeah.
But what is your hook right now? If someone goes to your website,
I think I might be in the crowd that doesn't have one.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I was just imagining my website, and I'm like, well, I've got my 3 hero images. The first thing that you see, I have a little tagline that doesn't solve a problem. It's just a generic tagline.
Do you capture memories?
Yeah, I think.
Do you capture moments
around that? and then some more images, my service list, and a little bit more about me, because that's what I see.
Right.
That's what I see. But when we go look at a really successful business, that's not what we're looking at most of the time. And I'm not talking about a wedding industry. I'm talking about big companies. They understand these things that you're talking about. And it's more than just me. Hey, here's something about me, and here's something about the photos that you think you need. And it goes a lot deeper than that. I'm not solving a problem.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of change that we can make together in order to kind of really start positioning ourselves towards the clients that we want, which kind of brings me into the next section I want to talk about is, how do I know what kind of clients I want? Is that something that over time I kind of, with experience, that I'm like, I really liked working with these people, and they really liked it when I did XYZ at the wedding, and I really liked it when I did XYZ at this wedding. Yeah. Is that the kind of questions I begin asking myself when I'm looking for my ideal client, and then basing my portfolio and website off of that person?
It's a good place to start. That's I think a common path that we see successful.
Yeah.
And it's obviously more nuanced and there's more depth to it. But yeah,
Okay.
starting with the kind of couples that you love doing work with,
Yeah.
and really analyzing and pulling back the layers to get at what that experience is like for you and also for them, so
Yeah.
that you can start to create a profile, that ideal client avatar. So
Yeah.
there's really three layers. You have functional, emotional, and then social needs that your client has. That's really what we're after. We want to get down to this emotional and social need. Think about it like an iceberg, and you've got whatever it is, like 20% of it on top that you can see, but 80% of it is down below, and that's the really big, massive stuff that that's filling up the space for the iceberg.
Yeah.
For your ideal client profile, there are these functional needs that they have, and that's just a surface level. But down below, deep and taking up a lot of space in the mind of the buyer, mostly non-consciously, are these emotional and social needs that they have. And so when you go through and do a brand excavation and you dig into what's below the surface and you do it right, you start to pick out what those emotional and those social needs are. The challenge that I think a lot of people who do branding, for instance, who create ideal client avatars run into is that they're focused on the surface. They're focused on the visual. They're focused on the pretty. And that's important because at first glance, you've got to connect with the type of feeling that they want to have in your store based on other places that they spend their time shopping, right? Like that's really important. But again, you have to catch them and hook them enough where they see a deeper understanding into themselves, into your business that they want to explore. And that's where we're getting into not just the demographics of an ideal client, but the ethographics and the psychographics. So the ethographics are what are the values and beliefs of your ideal client. And then the psychographics are what are the attitudes and the behaviors that they have. And so what we like as a company, we go through, we do brand strategies, we do branding, but we also do brand communication strategies where we identify the ethographics and the psychographics of your ideal client. When you know those psychographics, especially, and you can predict what their behaviors will be based on the psychographic profile, then you can start to produce marketing messages, both through images and copy and even website design based around what they're going to be motivated by on a psychological level, on an emotional and social level. And that's where you really hit pay dirt for your business.
Good. And how do I find that? How do I find the psycho and the etho and all that stuff of my client? Is that a questionnaire that I send afterwards? I'm like, hey,
what's your psychographic?
What's your psychographic? Right. What's your, what's your,
you can do that. I don't think you'd get very far.
Right.
They'd probably think you were psychotic rather than interested.
What's wrong with this guy? Just send me my photos.
but again, Sam, you're on the right path in the sense that, yes, you do send out a questionnaire. It's best done if you do it right after they book your services, because the decision-making process is fresh in their mind. As time elapses, people do what's called a post-rationalization, where they go back in time and they try to rationalize why they made an emotional decision that they weren't even aware of they were making. Yes. And so we want to try and tap into the more emotional reasons rather than logical reasons that they've kind of cemented months and months after they made the decision. So yes,
justified in their mind. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly right. So doing it right after is great. However, you can go back if you ask the right questions and get the information. When we do website design and copywriting for our clients, we always start with the brand communication strategy. The very first thing we do before we even talk with our client is that we send out a questionnaire with about 14, 15 questions to their ideal clients. And we'll send out, we try to get to 10 to 15. We typically get about a 60% response rate. We're looking for, 7 to 10 feedback forms. And from there, we take the information. Now, I'm not going to give you all the questions because that's a little bit of the secret sauce, but I'll give you a couple of them that are important. One of them would be, a question about, what were some hesitations that you had as you were going through and trying to book your photographer? Or what was your hesitation, the biggest hesitation you had before signing the contract with me? You can get right down to it. Okay. And that's going to be a concern.
Right.
And so we're attacking it from a painkiller perspective there. How can I find a pain point and come up with a message to communicate that prevents that pain point from ever surfacing, from ever arising?
Yeah.
We can get it before it becomes an issue. Another question that you could ask would be something like, was there anything about the experience in working with me that surprised you? And this is a really great question because it typically becomes a good thing. So that's a pleasure point that we're trying to meet instead of a pain point. So instead of the negative, we're getting the positive. Instead of the cautious, we're getting the optimistic. And that's good because especially as you go up in price, people are more about the pleasure points and the pain points. What we like about this one is that the information that you put on your website, it needs to include a surprising insight, a mystery that you're solving, or an aha insight that they're having about the service that you offer, photography, that they didn't know. And now they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. What else don't I know? I'm curious. And this guy knows it. And so he probably knows more stuff. So I'm going to reach out because I trust him. And so if you can get that aha moment directly from your clients, you can then take that information, the common threads with 7, 8, 9, 10 of these, you can find the ones that are most frequent, and then you can take that sentiment and you can infuse it into your kind of mid-stage marketing content that's really your website. And that then becomes the message that you're going to communicate. So you're extracting information from your past clients or current clients.
Good.
You're then finding the theme in there and the commonalities, and then you're projecting that out onto future buyers who are in your store, knowing that the people that you loved working with were all feeling or mostly feeling this one thing. And now you're connecting potential clients with what you know works. That right there, that takes time. So yeah, Sam, you could go through and do it on your own. We are professionals and we spend 20 to 30 hours doing research and strategizing and reporting and summarizing to make sure that our copy and website design and image selection recommendations are on point, that the compass needle is pointed in the right direction before we ever do any real work that you might see. So it's important work, and it's serious work, and it's time consuming work, and it takes skill, which is one of the reasons why we do what we do, why we have an agency.
As an investigator, you're looking for clues. And so it could be something as simple as they used the word detail versus emotion, or you're looking for words that fall into categories in their description of something. It may not be what they said, but more so how they said it, or even the length that they used to say it. Like they used 10 words versus 150 words, in which case, oh, that person really wants to relate. That person really wants to tell a story versus this he just cares about the detail.
Yeah,
so
that's
you're looking for deeper clues.
That's right. I mean, there's clues everywhere about the kind of people that you're working with. Like you give me a LinkedIn profile and I can tell you exactly what with high degree of accuracy, what it is that you should be focused on for your marketing messages and also the communication approaches that you should take. What we've been talking largely so far is about buyer psychology, emotional motivations. What are which of the 9 core psychological drivers that we know human beings are motivated by is moving this person through the buyer's journey for my photography services. That's really important. That's the what you need to communicate. But you bring up, Donnie, something that's really important, which is kind of the second component, which is not what needs to be said, but how it needs to be said, how to communicate it. Because we're all wired differently. We all process the world differently. We all communicate differently. And our job as marketers, as salespeople, as human beings, if we want to connect with people, is to match that wavelength, to match the mood and the energy that the person that we're communicating with brings to the conversation. And when we can do that, that's when we really connect. I just finished a book called Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. And every time I read a book like this, you guys, I'm always worried, like, oh man, is everything that I've learned or everything that I know or doing, like, is it going to be undone? Like, is this author going to tell me that, like, there's new science out there that makes me retract everything that I know?
Right.
And good news is, no, that was not the case with this one.
Good.
It just confirmed the opening introduction is actually a quick summary of the science behind and the reasoning behind the buyer type approach that we take with communication styles and preferences, and doing actually doubles down on this being the thing that you need to do to be able to connect with and communicate with human beings, whether that's marketing or sales or your spouse.
Yeah, right.
So
I
good.
love it. Just to as a human with a heart, I care so deeply about this. I've been doing sales for 20 something years. And I think maybe in the last third of that, I actually put language to what I naturally wanted to do. I'm a very pastoral sort of person. Like my gifting, I just want to know people's hearts. And my sales always kind of came out in a messy way through that lens. But as I've learned to craft it way more intentionally, this is just a really beautiful way to not manipulate, to find out who that person is, what do they really care about, how do they want to be cared for, and how can I serve them? So I'm never manipulating them. I'm never trying to get them to buy a service. I'm actually trying to help them with a genuine need that they have. And it just feels so beautiful. It's such a full-hearted way to serve someone across the table from you. Have you found that?
Yes, 100%. I think that people don't want to feel salesy when they're selling their services. I hear that a lot, and that's kind of the voice of the people that I talk to, is they use that word. I don't want to be salesy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to be like a used car salesman, which is funny because right now my daughter, she's about to turn 16, and so we're shopping for cars, and I'm dealing with a bunch of used car salesmen, and boy, are they bad. I'm like, oh man, you guys should hop into some training that I might be able to offer you.
Yeah.
But I tell my clients who often come to me because they're not good at sales, that you can instead switch your mindset from looking at this as selling and instead to helping. And it's interesting, Donnie, that you use that word, because that's what I always look at. If you go back and you look at my years of therapy that I've gone through over the course of my lifetime, there's a period in my life where I was borderline codependent. Well, I always wanted to jump in and be the rescuer, the savior. And what's interesting is that I've set up my whole life to help people. That's what I've done since I was 5 years old. And I've done this in one way or another. And I didn't realize until going through therapy that as somebody who likes to help people, is that I've just done this with my career too. And that's why I've always been drawn, I think, to sales. Yeah, I make a buck at it, or I make a buck for the business that I'm working for. But ultimately, I'm just trying to help people solve their problems. And I think that's another way to look at it too, is that you as a salesperson are just trying to solve people's problems. And I've always been a problem solver. I do jigsaw puzzles on the weekends still. Like I just went to Target the other day, and which is a big deal because I live on an island. So going to the somebody like Target is a big deal. And I was in there and I was like, oh, I'm going to load up on puzzles, jigsaw puzzles. And I came back and Katie, my wife, she was like, oh man, more puzzles, really? I do Wordle and connections.
Oh, yes.
Every morning, right?
Every morning. Yes.
I'm constantly solving puzzles with my work. People come to me with, hey, this thing is happening, or I'm experiencing this, or like people will come to me with their problem, and I'm like, okay, that's probably a symptom, not really the actual problem. Let's diagnose what's really at issue. But I'm always solving problems, and yeah, I mean, we charge for our services. That's the way that the world works, and I'm a man of the world like everybody else, and I'm trying to make a buck as a salesperson for my own company, just like you are. But at the end of the day, the couple's coming to you because they need help and they don't know what they need. That's the real thing that I think gets me about the wedding industry, is that you have these couples that need help, and you have businesses that want to provide the help because we love what we do. We think it's really valuable. We think that this is an important life experience and moment, and we want to contribute to that, especially as photographers. Everybody who's a photographer wants to give people something they can look back on forever. And to share with their family and friends and their spouse and their kids. And if you are good at that, you want to be good at that for as many people as possible. But the one thing that you've got to get better at is how to market and sell your services so that you can actually impact the kind of audience that you know deserves your work, your art, your creativity, your service level. And
Yes.
if you suck at marketing and selling that, then you're never going to fulfill the full potential that you have as a human being.
Exactly. And
Wow,
to
that's
kind of
deep.
tag on to that, I think there's something so much more rewarding to us, to our hearts, to our souls, when we get to serve from a point of I'm getting to help you, and at the same time you get to help me. And so when you shift your mindset from I've got to sell them on this, I've got to get this package sold, but now I'm going to build out my packages. I'm going to build out my sales approach around the idea of helping them solve the problem or helping them find the problem and solving it. And now I'm happy because I've actually helped somebody, and it's worth their money. It's worth their time, because I'm solving so much more than just, okay, I got my photographer secured.
Yeah.
And another thing is when you're finding your audience and you get to niche down and really build out your sales approach, your website, everything around the person you enjoy serving, it becomes so much more rewarding for you. And I know I was talking with another guest on our podcast a while back, and it was talking about just how hard it is when you start serving and you sell packages to people you really don't understand. And that's something, that's a thing. I mean, if I don't know how to help you, it starts to burn me out as a creator, and I don't know how to help them, and there's not the connection there yet. You're still selling it, and at the end of the day, they're not even as happy with their photos as they'd like, and you weren't either, because you didn't know them. You didn't take the time to niche down into your audience and find the people that really want your help.
This is good. This is a good segue, because I
go into it.
Where you're at is exactly where we need to take all the photographers listening. There are different kinds of people. One's going to say, I just really want to be posed because I don't know what I'm doing. I really want the photographer in my face, in control all day. There's others that I don't want to know the photographer's there. And there's 1,000 places in between. I think Sam has created, or at least identified, some buyer types, and he's given definition to them. So really all the things we're talking about, it begins with this exploration of there are a few buyer types. First, just know that, but then identifying the ones that you particularly love, and you actually as a person are one of those as well. And so that happens to be the one that you love working with.
Yeah.
But Sam, would you go in and kind of unpack the buyer types that you're talking about? We're kind of bouncing all around it, but we should define them a little bit and help our photographers understand that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, Donnie. And I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory here to provide some context. 10 years ago, actually a little over 10 years ago, I was a lodging director and event sales manager. I had a lot of people under my supervision. And, with the events department, I ran housekeeping and front desk and reservations, and worked a lot with a lot of different types of people. And I had, I'd gotten about as far as I could get with my own natural ability. And, I've always been a leader. I was the captain of every team. I was a senior class president, and on. But I didn't know how to get good at it without a mentor. So I went out, and I remember I went to an HR conference because I did a lot of hiring for our company. And I found this mentor in a woman named Laura Moriarty, and she does executive skill training for leaders, managers, directors, typically in the hospitality industry, about how to manage different people differently based on how they prefer to be managed. And this idea of like situational leadership was, mind blowing to me at the time. I just thought that I do me and people will follow, but that's not actually the optimal way to lead people. Shocking.
Right.
At the time, I look back on it, I'm like, how naive was I? But I did some immersive work with her. And one of the things that I learned about were these different communication preferences that people had. Some people, like to connect with you in meaningful ways, and it's all about the relationship, the process, not the outcome, the journey, not the destination. There were other people who really thrived on facts and figures and information, and they just wanted to know the things and become masters at their craft once they knew those things. There were other people who were like me, kind of get things done action oriented, who cared about the outcome, not the process, the destination, not the journey. And then there were other people who were very collaborative idea people. They cared about what could be, the possibilities, the potential, the dreams that they wanted to pursue. And so these were the 4 different profiles of people that I had to learn how to manage. And I remember being kind of the dot connector that I am. I remember thinking like, wow, if I could manage people knowing this, I could probably sell people knowing this. Because what I had learned, like you said, Donnie, we tend to project who our ideal client is based on us. And our ideal client is not just somebody who's able to pay for our services or has the same aesthetic style, but somebody we get along with. And so what I had found is that I was naturally good at selling to certain kind of people, but I was naturally bad at selling to others. Yeah. And I wanted to know how to sell to the others. That's what I wanted. I remember at the property that I was at, it was about 160 acres altogether. So we had 2 hotels, we had vacation houses that we rented, we had historic cottages, we had condominiums. I mean, it was nice. It was a big resort. And we also had a world-class marina with almost 400 slips in it. And oh, wow. And so there was a lot going on, and we would have people come up and they'd visit the island. And they would stay the night, and I'd tour around. I'd show them the garden and the chapel and the reception space and the rehearsal dinner space. So there was a lot of walking. And I remember as we were walking, there was always this like awkward silence with people that are probably very overwhelmed with information. And I'm out doing my little dog and pony, nickel tour and like, oh, and here's this, and this is the history of that. And this is where you could do this. And I would try and fill every single silent moment with more information so they could get as much done in as little time as possible, because that's how I like to buy. So I thought, oh, well, that's how I'm going to sell then, because that's how I like to buy. Well, I was totally wrong. What I realized is that when I went through and looked at my conversion rates with those kinds of couples that wanted the silence, that wanted some time to kind of work through it, I realized I wasn't converting at as high of rate. And so this is when it all kind of came together and gelled for me, that I just needed to communicate differently with those kinds of people. And so this is where I had the opportunity to kind of A/B test, right? If I'm doing 150, 200 tours a year, I can go out and I can practice 5 times a weekend. And I can try, I'm gonna not say something for 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. I'm gonna tell them that I'm gonna
go engagement shoots.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this would be super helpful for photographers on engagement shoots.
100%.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's also helpful on discovery calls, which I hope we end up talking about, because this is where you're really trying to spend time early on identifying what kind of buyer you're working with.
I'm sure we can dive all into that in this after the pod, but I'm really excited. Oh, yeah. You took the time to test out a few things, and did you discover what resonated with you and your ideal client?
Yeah, I did. I was able to go through and really round out what I had learned from Laura and more research that I did on kind of the underlying research that thought leaders had done to come up with these communication approaches. And I just kind of pulled on a thread, and down came the veil, and I was able to see what was behind that curtain. And I was like, wow, this is like, it's like I was talking to the wizard all of a sudden. And my sales knowledge just shot through the roof. And so what I've been able to do is create these different profiles of different buyers. And you can look at these profiles that I've created, and I've listed out, ways that you can tell that you're working with or getting an inquiry from a particular buyer type based off of the clues that we get in the very early stages of the conversations with them. Things like, what kind of career choice or what kind of job they have, or, what length of content they share with you in the open forum field of the inquiry, or how loud or fast they talk. Or if they take control of the conversation or let you run with it, whether they use words like think or feel when you ask them a question. There are lots of different clues that you can pick up on. And the cool thing is, when you get those clues, you can then apply them to what kind of buyer profile we're working with. Once you know the buyer profile we're working with, we know 2 things: what we need to say and how we need to say it. What are the psychological triggers? What are the messages we're trying to communicate? And then what are the communication preferences? How do they like to interact with the people that they're working with? And so that then guides and directs the trajectory of the buyer's journey for them and for you as a salesperson that's guiding it.
Would you name the 4 real quick, just so we're talking about the same things?
Yeah. So the 4 types of buyers are the relator, the analyzer, the boss, and the dreamer. So now, whenever I talk about them, I typically go through in this order. So a few minutes ago, when I mentioned the person who wants that meaningful relationship, that's the relator. The one who wants the information, the expertise that you offer, that's the analyzer. The boss type is the one that just wants to know that you're going to give them a great set of images that they can look back on and frankly that their spouse is going to be happy with. And then the dreamer is somebody who really sees the images as capturing a moment in their life when they're probably at close to their peak. Their peak as far as how they look, their peak as far as how social they are with their family and friends, and this is a seminal moment that they want to look back on for years to come before life starts happening to them. So these 4 different buyer types are fairly simple to identify with the characteristics, but it takes practice to get good at actually marking the kind of person that you're working with.
Hey guys, if you're already a member of Shoot the Veil, feel free to skip through this. If you're not, I want to talk to you about something that could change your career as a wedding photographer. Shoot the Veil is a new platform that is built by wedding photographers for wedding photographers. This platform has everything you need, from courses from creators you love, posing and planning, follow-alongs, and exclusive interviews with some of the world's best wedding photographers. And on top of that, we give away some crazy cool gear every month. If you're not in, go check it out and download it now.
So a relator wants obviously a relationship, even with you, but they talk about relationship type things. The analyzer wants the details. They want to look at as much information as possible. Just those 2 alone is going to be a very different website.
You don't want to sell one strategy to the other.
Yeah. And you could, I guess, overwhelm a relator with too much information.
Correct.
Okay. And then you have the boss type who, I guess I'm putting my own imagination there. They just kind of want to get to the decision making. Like, give me the details. What's your value proposition?
What do I need to know to book? How much does it cost, and what does the contract look like? And they just skip to the end, which is actually not helpful for them, but they don't know that.
Yes.
Okay. Good. The and then the dreamer was the 4th one. They're kind of telling a big story.
They want to, I think that they do want a big story. So like if I went through and I looked at specifically for photography, and I've actually broken down, what it is that individual fields in the wedding industry need to focus on for their website, for their sales collateral, specifically their proposal. Because again, once we know the buyer we're working with, we can predict what it is that they're interested in. We've also done, over 300 website projects. And we've done another couple hundred brand communication strategies. So, take 500 of these times 5 to 10 questionnaires we've gotten back. We've looked at thousands of couples' responses, and our photographers are our number 1 segment. So we've looked at over 1,000 responses from couples, and we're able to kind of categorize them and put them into these profiles with these basic desires that we know they have. So cheat sheet here is the relator buyer for photography. They want to have intimate moments with their spouse. So like the idea of like a first look, maybe they want to have some time with all the hustle and bustle of the cocktail hour. They might want to slip away a little bit to have a moment. But they also don't want to abandon their family and friends because they want to be a good host for the party. So they're the ones that also want to make sure that you're grabbing candids during cocktail hour of all of the people who are there, because they feel bad if they don't get to spend time with them, but at least they can look back on the photos that they have to take away. The analyzer for the photographer is going to want totally different things. The boss is going to want totally different things. The dreamer is going to want totally different things. But you can go through and you can see how detailed you can get with understanding what it is that buyer wants from you, and then you can start to pick images, write copy, even lay out your site according to their preferences.
Okay. And just for everybody listening, if you're a member of Shoot the Veil, we're going to do an after the pod with Sam where he's going to actually unpack a different website for each of these buyer types. And he's got some examples to show us. This is worth its weight in gold. 100%. I promise you. Like when you see what a website looks like when it's meticulously handled intentionally for a certain buyer type, you feel it. Like everything on the website feels, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, here's my money. Like everything just works from start to finish when it's intentional. And
exactly,
the word coherence is important. Like there's a lot of incoherence on our websites because we're trying to talk to a lot of different people. And these buyer types, we're trying to talk to all of them. We show people the intimate moment. We show people you're on a cliff with a helicopter. We show people the party at the end. Like we're showing all the different buyer types because we feel like, well, we need to talk to everybody. But there's something about that loses coherence for that particular one.
I think so, Donnie. What's interesting, and you bring this up, and we haven't mentioned it yet, is that the really challenging part about marketing and selling your wedding services is that it's not just one buyer. We don't have just an ideal client who's making the purchase decision. We have multiple people. We have at least two people who are involved, the couple that's getting married, but we also have other people who are involved, whether it's directly or indirectly. And so when we go through and we think about how do you market and how do you sell, my advice is market to your ideal client and sell to anybody you want to put a date on the calendar with. So we want to put out content on your social media, even picking the kind of referral partners, whether it's planner or venue, people who are upstream from you, or your website, and all the way through the marketing stages of the buyer's journey. We want to focus on your ideal client primarily. I call it the scout buyer, the one who's going out and like scouting out information, collecting it, bringing it back for the group. That's the one that you're marketing to. That's the active agent within the committee of people that are making the decision. However, when you get the inquiry, you've got to, and this is where most people make a misstep, is that you can't sell to just the person who inquires. In fact, at that point, that person already loves you. What you're actually doing is trying to sell to the person that hasn't really gotten the information, hasn't spent a lot of time on your site, and hasn't really probably been involved very much in the collation of the information. They're just waiting for all of the information to come back. This is, if you're married, you know how this works. Like, you have a dynamic with your spouse where you make decisions jointly, but one person takes the lead on certain types of things. Like with me and Katie, if it has to do with the outside of the house, we have 2 acres. Then that's my domain, but she gets to be involved in the decision making and has veto power. If it's interior, she is the one who takes the lead on it, and I get to be involved and I have veto power. The couple that you're working with is functioning the same way. And this is, if you wonder like, am I really dealing with this? Absolutely you are. Even if you are working with the stereotypical bride who is like, oh, I love this. And I'm the one who's taking the lead on the sales or on the buying of vendor services for photographers. Not true. There's so much going on behind the scenes. Your job is to recognize that that's going on. And so a key indicator of that happening is if you are on the call with somebody or emailing with somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I love your work. I've heard only great things. You have all 5-star reviews. You are such my person. I feel like we really connected. Send over the contract. I cannot wait to talk this over with my fiance, or I can't wait to sign it and send back the money. And then nothing happens. Crickets. Ghost town, right?
Yes.
And that right there, my friends, that's because the second decision maker just got involved, and you are at step 1 with that person, not 19, which is where you were at with the person who inquired, but step 1 with that person. And so there are things that you can do or you can do to increase your chances of being able to sell to them that are going to be different than the person that you had originally got on the phone or on a Zoom call or were emailing back and forth with. Wow. You have to sell differently to different people at different times, at different stages in the buyer's journey. And this is what makes this so damn hard.
Yeah.
Right.
So huge.
This is a perfect segue into the after the pod.
Yeah, I'm ready to go to the after pod right now.
Listeners, I want to just, first of all, Sam, thank you. You have been such a big part of Shoot the Veil. For all the listeners watching and tuning in, Sam has so much more to offer you guys. Take advantage of it. Go to the course section of the app. Check out, he has given us his masterminds where you can learn a lot of this stuff. And not only that, go check out his profile on Shoot the Veil and get a call with this guy. I mean, seriously, you've seen the knowledge he has. This can transform your business. And just to segue right in, let's jump into this after the pod. Talk about intro calls, talk about websites, and some other huge things that we may be missing out on.
That's great. Sam, is there any way that people can get to you other than, we love people going through the app, which is amazing, and you're connected, you're active, you're offering so much to the community. But in case someone in the world happens to not be a member, which is weird, but maybe they're not a member of Shoot the Veil, how can they get to you? Because we want to make sure that happens too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I always say start with the free stuff. Go to Instagram, Ideaction Consulting. We share a lot of tips and insights on how to attract and book your ideal client. I also have my own podcast, Own Your Business is the name of the podcast.
Which is
Own
great.
Your Business, yep. And I talk about things like this. My wife, who's my business partner and our head copywriter, Katie, she is on the podcast quite regularly. And we talk about websites, copywriting. We talk about sales, pricing, growth strategies, and also what it's like to be a business owner, because most of us work at home. And like you said earlier, Sam, like we look around at what other people are doing, but we don't always understand the why behind those decisions. And so I dig into those on the podcast.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Sam. And for all the listeners watching, go to the app and watch the After the Pod. We'll see you there.